Hey guys, Bassmaster Elite Series Pro Drew Benton. I'm here in Cumming, Georgia. I'm picking up my 2024 Elite Series boat from Sonar Pros. My friend Trent knocked it out of the park this year. Let me walk you through what we did. So coming up front, first of all, first impression, if 16-year-old Drew could see what I'm getting to run right now, I mean, I'm just totally blessed to be able to do this as, for a living, and to have a rig like this is just, unbelievable. I would have never thought that I would get to a point in life to even be considered to own something like this, but it's just an awesome rig. I ran 2 graphs up front last year, ran 2 Lowrances, I ran active target, and that got me through the season. But looking at the schedule this year, I saw the need to add a third for that perspective view, or scout view, however you want to call it. It's where you turn the transducer sideways and you get a bird's eye view in front of your boat, as well as your forward-facing sonar that's placed vertically on your trolling motor to see the fish suspended in the water column. That will allow me to see isolated stumps, isolated boulders, holes in the grass that I'm coming up on, and I can make quick, accurate casts to fish those pieces of structure before I get up on them, and I can identify them a whole lot better from that view. So I went with 3 graphs, went with a Lowrance for mapping and 2D. I like Lowrance for their waypoint management. I run 2 Lowrances at the console, so whenever I mark a waypoint, I see something on structure scan, side scan, I can mark that waypoint and it shows up here on my mapping, and it communicates really well. And that management system, in my opinion, is top in its class. But I felt like Garmin rules live scope. I feel like forward-facing sonar, they own the technology that is best, and I went with 2 Garmin units to utilize that. You got the power pole move trolling motor. I can't say enough good things about this trolling motor. I noticed it the most at Lake Murray when I was sight fishing, just how quiet this trolling motor is, easing around the shallows on 50 to 70%. The fish on the bed typically in the past would scoot off, and I would see the fish swim off and I would turn around and target them. A lot of times running this trolling motor, they wouldn't even swim off the bed. That tells you how quiet this thing is and how close you're allowed to get to them just by that brushless technology. And being that everybody has forward-facing sonar, I'm starting to see that those fish won't tolerate the boat is close. So that's going to play a big factor as well, just because I'm not going to spook as many fish and I can get a little bit closer to them without them feeling the presence of the boat and hearing me. Moving on back, I went with a complete padded deck. In the past, I've just ran their standard padded deck right here, but all my box lids are padded. All right, getting in the boat, he put bass boat deck down both in my finished boxes, and we actually pulled the carpet up in both rod boxes, because what happens is when you have that carpet in there and you fish in the rain or you put wet rods up, that's the last place to dry up. And 2, it keeps hooks from getting hung in the bottom constantly. They bounce out of the reel and fall down the floor, and you're always getting hooks out. So that's a very smart addition that we did this year. But this bass boat deck, it keeps your boxes from banging around. It keeps it a little bit more quiet. I've got it in the floor as well instead of carpet because it's going to dry a whole lot faster. You get a lot of water here in the floor. And also, when you do have a fish flounce around, hit the floor, it's not on that harmful carpet knocking slime off of it constantly. He put my logo in it, which is a really cool addition. I think it kind of personalized my boat. We did that last year and it turned out really well. And this bait hanger here I had last year, it really helped my organization and also helped me be a little bit more efficient, because like if I was fishing up north and you're having to retie, change out hooks, you're breaking off a lot of drop shots and whatnot, I could put me 4 or 5 hooks right here on it. If I've got shaky head fishing, I'll pull a handful of shaky heads out and line them up so they're sitting there on standby. I don't have to go in and out of these boxes. And it also just keeps this area clean. Typically when I'm practicing, a bait doesn't work, I cut it off, I chunk it down here in the bottom, and I forget about it for the next 3 events. And I'll develop a prototype pile that heaps up, like this. You get rusty hooks in your carpet. It looks bad. This keeps everything organized, clean, keeps it out of the carpet, and keeps it from getting all rusty. Moving over to the console, more of the same as I ran last year, Bass Boat Technology gimbals, two Lowrance 12s. Again, this is the best waypoint management system. Their structure scan's really good. It's very clear. I can see fish and structure very well. And again, whenever I hit a waypoint and I want to mark a place when I'm idling, it's going to show up there on that map. That's the reason why I like this connection here. I've got digital Yamaha gauges. I've got heated seats. Everything that you would expect in a sports car, I just about have in this bass boat. It's just an awesome package. Moving to the back, we have more bass boat deck right here on these step pads and in the splash well. You know, one of the problems that bass boats have when you have a gel coat or metal flake splash well is your rigging tube's always bouncing around, scratching that up. These bass boat deck pads keep that from happening, and it also dresses it up. It's a really sharp look. Two power poles, that they kind of speak for themselves. I'm a shallow water guy. You cannot fish without power poles, in my opinion, efficiently shallow anymore. Went with the Yamaha this year. I'm from Panama City, Florida, down in the Panhandle, all throughout Florida. I grew up on Yamaha, and that name says reliability, and it gets me out there and gets me back, and that's kind of what you've got to have doing this. You can't have any failures. It puts you way down in the standings and puts you way back behind the 8-ball for the year. So you got to have a reliable engine. This year I went with Yamaha. All right, so with the extra graph up front, we opted to put an extra Battleborn battery just solely to run my electronics. So I've got my three 12-volt trolling batteries. I've got this is basically an auxiliary graph battery. Then I've got an AGM to run basically just the engine and my live well pumps. Basically anything else, bilge pump or whatever, will still run off the AGM battery as well. But what I'm doing here is cutting out the problem of having to turn the graph off or put it in standby, or worry about not having enough power throughout the day running my live wells all day. That extra battery is going to solve that problem. They're all connected to the Power Pole Charge, which is a phenomenal charging and battery monitoring system. So whenever I do run this engine, it's topping off that battery and then putting excess power back into my trolling batteries. I never run them down throughout the day. When I get back in and I'm plugging up the charge, I can plug up right here in this plug, and it's going to charge these three batteries and my cranking battery. What Trent did is put an extra little auxiliary charger in here that charges this graph battery by itself because it's a standalone battery. So when I plug in there, it's charging everything at once. And whenever I'm cranked up running, this DC to DC charger takes additional amperage from this battery and puts it onto the standalone battery. The only reason we did this is because the Power Pole Charge can only monitor my trolling setup and my cranking setup at once. It can't do a fourth trolling motor battery. Maybe that's something that they come up with in the future, but as of right now, this is the best setup for my application. I've got a switch right here. This basically just controls what my graphs are getting power from. So if in the event that battery goes dead, I can switch it from L, which stands for lithium, over here to A, which stands for AGM, and I still will have power for my AGM battery. This is a system put together by Trent himself. I think it's a foolproof system to make sure that, in any scenario, things can happen on the water, and I can have a battery failure or whatever the case may be. Maybe they didn't get charged all the way at the hotel that I'm staying at. But I can swap this back and forth, and I have an option to run my graphs off of this battery and know that it's going to be charged by the stator on that motor. So I've been with Phoenix for some 13 years now, and I've ran a 721 every season except for one. That was early on in my career. This 721 to me is the best boat in their lineup for my style of fishing. It's a 21-foot boat. It's still narrow up front, so it's easy to keep that bow up in big water. It reaches across the waves because it's 21 foot long, and it gets in and out of docks and tight places, which I like to do. I like to sight fish, so I'm in and out of tight areas where the fish are bedding. It drafts really shallow, and it's the fastest boat in their lineup. For me, good rough water handling. The ride of it's really great. It fishes really good, and I think a boat should fit your style, and the 721 is the best in their lineup to fit my style of fishing. One important part that you can't really see is the harness that Trent pioneered in this whole game. You've got clean power running from that battery all the way to each one of these graphs, and that's huge. These graphs depend on full amperage to run efficiently and to have a clear picture. Your transducer has to give a good signal back to that unit, so you've got a lot of moving parts, and if you don't have clean power, you can have the best units in the world and they're not going to work properly and not going to see everything that they're capable of seeing. So that clean power from that wiring harness that he puts in here is the backbone of this whole system. So wrapping up the boat build we did with Sonar Pros, I can't be more pleased with how this one turned out. You know, Trent knocked it out of the park with the bass boat deck on the fenders, the step pads, and the floor, and all the boxes. We all know that he's known for his electronics, but the fit and finish that this boat has now, it just has my signature on it, and I can't be more excited to get going in the 2024 season.